The raid on Lindisfarne in 793 was not an isolated nightmare. It was a signal. Along the coasts of Britain and Ireland, life slowly returns to normal after the shock. Fields are ploughed, nets are cast, bells call to prayer. But beneath the surface, something has changed. People glance more often at the sea. A dark line on the horizon, a sail in the distance, can freeze the blood for a moment. Because no one really believes it will happen only once. At first, the Vikings come rarely. A few ships here, a few there. One summer, a monastery in Northumbria is hit. Another year, a trading settlement in the Hebrides. The pattern is scattered, confusing. To the people who live through it, each attack feels like a random disaster, like a storm or a plague. But on the other side of the sea, in Scandinavia, nothing about this is random. News of Lindisfarne spreads among chieftains and ambitious young warriors. Men boast of the silver they took, the slaves they sold, the fear in the eyes of the monks. Around longhouse fires, they talk of the soft, fat lands to the west, where churches overflow with gold and the people are slow to react. More warbands decide to try their luck. The ships they use are long and narrow, built for speed. A shallow draft lets them slip close to shore or far up rivers. A single crew can row in silence or raise a square sail and let the wind carry them. Compared to heavy merchant vessels or clumsy coastal boats, these ships are like predators among sheep. In the early 800s, they begin to probe the shores of the British Isles more systematically. They strike at Jarrow and Wearmouth in Northumbria, monasteries famous for books and learning. They hit isolated communities on the Scottish Islands. They raid along the coasts of Wales. Each time they learn something new, the tides, the currents, how long it takes local lords to gather men. To the monks and peasants of Britain, it feels like lightning striking at random. To the Vikings, it is reconnaissance. Across the Irish Sea, another set of targets gleams, the monasteries of Ireland. Places like Iona, Inishmurray and Clonmacnoise are not just spiritual centres, they are banks, schools, scriptoria and political hubs. They store tribute from kings, gifts from pilgrims, and beautifully decorated books bound in precious metal. The first Viking raids on Ireland are recorded around the year 795. A church on Recru, probably Lambay Island near Dublin, is burned. Iona, the holy island of St. Columba, is attacked multiple times. The Irish annals speak of heathens who come out of the sea, burn churches, kill monks, and carry others away as captives. For the Irish, it is a new kind of enemy. They are used to warfare. Irish kings fight each other constantly. Cattle raids are part of normal politics. But this is something different. These raiders do not care about dynasties or land disputes. They come for one thing only: plunder. And then they are gone. The great frustration for local rulers in both Britain and Ireland is that the Vikings choose when to fight. If a local king gathers his warriors and rides to defend one stretch of coast, the raiders simply sail 50 kilometers north and hit somewhere else. If he tries to cover everything, he ends up defending nothing. This asymmetry is the Vikings' greatest weapon. They can turn up almost anywhere. They can retreat faster than heavy armed forces can move over land. and they are learning the coastline of the British Isles as intimately as they know their own fjords and inlets back home. As the decades pass, the raids grow more frequent and more organised. In the beginning, most Viking expeditions are strictly seasonal. A warband gathers in spring, sails in summer, returns home before winter. Men expect to be back in time for the harvest, for marriages, for the winter feasts. But success changes habits. Some leaders realize that if they stay in foreign lands over winter, they can raid earlier in the season and later, and avoid the dangerous crossings in autumn storms. They begin to look for safe places to camp, river islands, promontories, abandoned Roman forts, shallow bays where they can pull their ships ashore and fortify the beach. In Ireland, this idea crystallizes into something new, the longphort, literally a ship fort. A longphort is part camp, part fortress, part port. It sits near good anchorage, usually on a river or at a sheltered coastal spot. The Vikings throw up earthworks and wooden palisades, park their ships inside the protected area, and use it as a permanent base. From there, they can raid the surrounding countryside, demand tribute from local kings, and, increasingly, trade. Around the 830s and 840s, names begin to appear in the Irish annals that will later mark the birth of cities: Dublin, Limerick, Waterford, Wexford, Cork. At this stage, they are not yet towns in the full sense, just fortified Viking bases. But they are more than temporary camps. Some families arrive, markets spring up, slaves, furs, weapons, wine and silver change hands. What began as piracy is slowly turning into settlement. In Britain, a similar shift is happening, though more slowly. Vikings still mainly operate as mobile warbands, but they increasingly overwinter in England and Scotland. They occupy islands, estuaries, and old Roman sites. Each winter they learn more about the political map. They learn who can be bullied and who must be bought. Local rulers have mixed reactions. Some fight, some negotiate, and some even ally with the new arrivals against their own rivals. For a smaller king, hiring a group of Vikings as mercenaries can tip the balance in an internal power struggle. The price is paid in silver, land, or the right to plunder a neighbour. This creates a vicious cycle. Every victory, every sack of a monastery, every bag of tribute sent back to Scandinavia sends a message. There is wealth in the West, and it is there for the taking. Back home, young men who have heard tales of silver and adventure feel the pull. Population pressure, feuds, and lack of land push them from behind. Opportunity and glory pull from ahead. More ships are built. More warbands form. Some leaders begin to think in terms larger than a few raids. They look at the kingdoms of Britain and Ireland and see not just loot, but something much more valuable: control. If a single monastery can pay a fortune once, what might an entire region pay every year in taxes and tribute? This is the mental step that turns raiders into conquerors. By the middle of the 9th century, the ground has been prepared. The coastlines of Britain and Ireland are known. River routes are mapped. Weak spots in defences are tested. Local politics are understood. Which kingdoms hate each other, which thrones are shaky, which nobles are ready to betray a neighbour. All that remains is for someone to gather enough ships and men to gamble on a bigger prize. While the Vikings are evolving, the island kingdoms are struggling to keep up. In Anglo-Saxon England, 4 major kingdoms share the land. Northumbria in the north, Mercia in the Midlands, East Anglia in the east, and Wessex in the south. Around them are smaller Welsh kingdoms, Cornish rulers in the southwest, and the Picts and Scots further north. These kingdoms are no strangers to war. They fight border skirmishes, launch raids on each other, and sometimes seek to dominate their neighbours. But most of their warfare is slow-moving. Armies gather over weeks. Campaigns are planned for seasons. The Vikings play by different rules. One summer they appear in Northumbria. The next they are in Cornwall. Then they vanish for a year, only to return on the east coast with twice as many ships. It is like trying to fight smoke with a spear. Some kings react by building burhs, fortified towns and strongpoints. Others focus on coastal watch systems, using beacons and riders to warn of incoming fleets. But no system is perfect, and the cost of defending every stretch of coast is impossibly high. In Ireland, the political landscape is even more fragmented. Dozens of kings and over-kings compete for prestige, cattle, and land. Rivalries between Irish dynasties are older and deeper than the Viking threat. In some cases, Irish rulers are more interested in using Vikings against their enemies than in uniting to drive them out. The result is that the raiders can always find a crack to slip through. For ordinary people, all of this plays out not on maps, but in terrifying moments. A woman hanging clothes by the shore sees shapes on the water that were not there yesterday. A monk illuminating a manuscript stops when the church bell rings wildly, not for prayer, but for alarm. A farmer hears that a monastery 2 days' journey away has been burned, and wonders if his own village will be next. Rumours race around the coasts, stories of burning churches, of kings humiliated, of great hoards of silver carried away. Some are exaggerated, some are true, but all of them build the same image. The men from the north are unstoppable. And yet, under the fear, something else is happening. The Vikings are slowly committing themselves more deeply to the British Isles. They have bases now, camps, even families in some places. Their leaders begin to see themselves not only as raiders, but as potential rulers. They have tested the strength of the kingdoms. They have seen rival kings fall, alliances crumble, thrones left shaky. By the year 865, less than a century after Lindisfarne, the stage is set. The coastlines have been mapped by fire and blood. The rivers have carried longships deep into the interior. The names of places like Dublin and Cork are beginning to feel half Norse, half native. Tribute has flowed across the sea for decades. Now, a new idea takes hold among the most ambitious Viking leaders. Why keep sailing back and forth at all? Why not take the land itself? That autumn, more sails appear on the horizon of eastern England than anyone has seen before. This is not a raiding party. This is a host, a great army drawn from many bands and many homelands, united by hunger for land, wealth, and glory. The chroniclers in England will call it the Great Heathen Army. In the next episode, we will follow that army as it crashes into the kingdoms of Anglo-Saxon England, toppling kings, breaking ancient realms, and forcing one unlikely survivor, a young prince named Alfred, to stand between his people and the end of their world.